at it again. Students offer extra credit to determine their level of white privilege. I can't say that I'm very surprised. Students in a sociology class at San Diego State University can earn extra credit if they take a quiz to determine their level of white privilege. Professor Day Elliott offered the option to her sociology class students a white privilege checklist that includes 20 questions that aim to illustrate that racial privilege is one form of privilege. Before I read from the white privilege checklist, I want to know what they are trying to achieve at university. Look, I understand that we should treat each other as equals. Notice I said each other and didn't qualify it with a skin color, sex, gender, religion, etc. Why should anyone who believes that every human is equal? Well, apparently, the well-meaning folks at San Diego State University think there is something wrong with you due to the way you were born. That is, if you are unfortunate to be born white, that deadly toxic bacteria that is known as white skin. Let's take a look at this checklist and see where we find our disgusting and diseased white bodies. Peggy McIntosh, Associate Director of the Wellesley College Center for Research on Women, describes white privilege as an invisible package of unearned assets which I can count on cashing in each day, but about which I was meant to remain oblivious. White privilege is like an invisible, weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, tools, and blank checks. The following are examples of ways white individuals have privilege because they are white. Please read the list and place a check next to the privileges that apply to you or that you have encountered. At the end, try to list at least 2 more ways you have privilege based on your race. Now, I'm not going to read everything off the checklist, and everything that I am looking at here you can find links to in the description below. But the first one of white privilege checklist is, I can arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. I don't really see that as something being specific to white people. That's a really strange one. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured I will not be followed or harassed. Well, sounds like they don't have a stalker. Good for them. I can turn on the television or open the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. I would have to say that if people of your race make up a majority of the population, then they're probably going to be represented in the majority. Number 4, when I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. I guess in the case of the roots of the nation, if it was white Europeans that settled and made it what it is, as they say, then I guess that would be part of the national heritage. Okay, number 5, I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. I don't understand what that is. Decades ago, they had that thing where the standardized test was racist because they showed a teacup and a saucer, and see, black people weren't supposed to understand what that was, which I think was pretty racist for them to even say something like that. I can go into a music shop and count on finding the music of my race represented. Well, I guess it depends on which music shop you go into. Oh, that's crazy. That's not even worth going over. Here's a good one. Number 8. I am not made acutely aware that my shape, bearing, or body odor will be taken as a reflection of my race. Well, I guess if you've got a problem with body odor, you'd be lucky if they attribute it to a race and not you smelling and not having good hygiene. That might actually work out to be a benefit. Number 11, I can be late to a meeting without having the lateness reflect on my race. I can attest to that. However, being late to meetings, important meetings that I've been late to, the few that I have, I really wish I could have had my race to fall back on, because in certain team meeting settings or where you're dealing with very high up superiors, they don't appreciate you showing up late to a meeting. And I'll tell you what, my race had nothing to do with the chastising I received. Number 13, I am never asked to speak for all of the people of my racial group. I've heard this one, but I don't really see people going around saying, So tell us about all blacks or all Hispanics. How do all your monolithic culture, how does everybody feel? And you know the answer to every single person. I've given up on the checklist. A lot of the things on the items on the checklist are from more appropriate for days gone by, like the Jim Crow laws, and don't really pertain to modern America. At the end of the quiz, students were also made aware of other forms of privilege such as gender, sexual orientation, class, and religion, as well as asked to define any more types they can think of. You're pretty stupid if you don't realize that the people around you do not always share the same background or lived experiences. But the goals of identity politics is to divide us into smaller and smaller subsections rather than focusing on what we share. Let me give you some common sense examples. I don't understand what it is to be attracted to or love someone of the same sex, but I do understand what it's like to be attracted to and love someone to share my life with. I don't know what it's like to be a black living in America, but I have spent considerable time living places as a minority due to my skin color. Every one of us want to enjoy life and share it with others. That is so much we have in common that it is difficult for me to understand why our colleges want to splinter a possible harmony that could exist. Is this some attempt to right the wrongs of the past by making some of us feel like shit for something we have no control over? Are there bigots and racists running around the world? Well, there surely is. If you want to focus on the percent of people that do not buy into equality, I say fair game. But pointing out our original sin is not gainful, and it is a tree that will not bear fruit. To earn the extra credit, students were told to also answer a series of questions given to them by the professor. They are, were you surprised by your score, or did it confirm what you already knew? Why is privilege normally invisible, and what does it feel like to make it visible? I have to say, these social justice warriors have made so much noise about this. How could it not be visible? But it's not a matter of being visible or not. It's whether it is relevant. Think about this. Billions of people all over the world are born and live in a country that, under this checklist, makes them have privilege. So whether it is China or anywhere in Asia, Africa, or any other place, to say that living as a majority ethnic group in any given population is normal is quite obvious. It is how you are to others that marks the kind of person you are. This brings to mind the division in some branches of Christian faiths that say your salvation is achieved through your good actions and devotion to God, whereas others feel that your dedication to the authority of the Bible as God's revelation to humanity and in spreading the Christian message is. It is quite the parallel, since the cult of social justice brands you a sinner for wrong think and lack of virtue signaling rather than your actions. Remember the famous words of Reverend Martin Luther King, judging not by the color of a person's skin, but the content of their character. These words resonate because they are a universal truth for the civilized world. But the identitarians on the left beg to differ with his words. We are being dragged back into history to a time where we are guilty for being who and what we have no control over. Do you think this exercise is different for white students than for students of color, for black students than for Asian, Indian, Latino, students, or other students of color? As I mentioned previously, it would be different for those groups if they were born and raised in a place where the population looked just like them. Do you think they are asking this in Korea? I very much doubt it. The professor added that the exercise asked my students to step out of their subjectivity, extend their understanding, and begin to be a conscious part of understanding, and hence gaining more power and agency to affect change. Not everyone agrees. San Diego State University College Republicans President Brandon Jones said the assignment is divisive. I agree. This is another attempt by the left, said Professor Elliott, to divide America. I also agree. The left's political goal is to ensure that minorities in America perpetuate that their primary problem is white racism. This only furthers the portrayal of minorities in America as victims and does nothing to help contribute to their advancement in society. Well, it's good to see that the White Privilege Resource Guide provided to us by the University of San Francisco wants us to know that becoming aware of privilege should not be viewed as a burden or source of guilt. How kind of them. Why do you think they have to point out that you shouldn't feel guilt? Because that is the sole purpose of the exercise. You may notice on their mini checklist that they have included not just the usual cast of privileged suspects, but also includes class. Imagine, if you will, you are a minority in the United States. You work hard for many years. Let us assume by your own sacrifices and achievement have acquired a high standard of living. You are living the American dream, but since you are a cis-het toady, you decide to have a family, also part of the American dream. For some, your offspring who may inherit your class or wealth could very well find themselves with more opportunities than a percent of the population who, by the accident of birth, are less fortunate. No one with a sound mind would begrudge those born into some wealth or success, no matter their skin color. I offer this simple thought exercise to show how this new accounting system of privilege is being used. Let us return to the different branches of Christianity and Martin Luther King's content of your character issues. We should be judged by our actions and not by the conditions we cannot control. Some Christians say we can only be saved by the correct acceptance of God, not good deeds. There is a parallel between King's content of your character and the good and kind actions needed for salvation by some Christians. The social justice identitarians are not interested in your character or action. They are only concerned with proper ideology, like some Christians who repeat the correct dogma. America does not have a static or institutional class system where the lowest of the lowborn can rise up to the top. In their case, it's a matter of personal achievement. I can see that some would want to perpetuate the permanent victim class as an excuse for their failures. Much easier to blame others for your misfortunes rather than striving for what it is you desire. For some, that is. It's amazing that this eternal victim mentality is being sold on campus, where a large portion of Americans, whether white, privileged, or not, could not afford such a luxury to be at. The issues of privilege are a vestige of our past, and these divisive concepts need to be left behind with those memories. What do you think? Please comment below. Goodbye.